The Leon Valley, Texas city manager announced his resignation, citing fears that the people might regain control over the city government. "There's no reason for me to remain," City Manager Gilbert Perales said, especially when the council continues to question the authority vested on the city manager. On today's corruption report, I'll share with you the inflammatory resignation letter and behind-the-scenes insight that you will not find anywhere else. In Texas, there's an establishment of unelected city administrators and attorneys who don't want the people to have control over City Hall. Taxpayer-funded organizations such as the Texas Municipal League and the Texas City Managers Association use your money to take even more power away from you. The brilliant unelected bureaucrats know what is best for us. The new Leon Valley Home Rule Charter created a dictator as a city manager. Section 5.01A requires that the city manager be chosen by the city council solely on the basis of the city manager's executive and administrative training, experience, and ability. This section is almost certainly unconstitutional. It's an attempt to lock them into hiring tyrant city managers. But councilors have a right to hire someone who aligns with their beliefs and vision. Section 3.09 states that neither the city council nor any of its members shall dictate to the city manager the appointment of any person to office or employment. No member of city council shall interfere with the city manager in the performance of the duties of that office or prevent the city manager from exercising the city manager's own judgment in the appointment of officers and employees. Just obey the city manager. Don't tell him what to do. I'm being serious. This is what Section 3.01B says. The mayor and city council are legislators and shall not encroach on the executive responsibilities of the city manager. The people are supposed to leave the fantastic unelected city manager alone. An amendment from last year specifically targeting Mayor Riley states that the mayor may debate and discuss any policy matters before the city council, but shall remain neutral and unbiased in dealing with the citizens and city council members. I'm not sure what exactly that means, but it sounds unconstitutional to me. A few weeks ago, Mayor Chris Riley submitted proposed changes to the city charter. She wanted to remove all of the provisions I just read, along with many more, including the entire Section 312 provision, which was used to remove Councilman Benny Martinez, who was accused of giving orders to staff, such as that the city should be business-friendly. Riley listed 3 principal reasons for the proposed changes. 1. To eliminate the provisions which transferred power from the mayor and city council to the city manager. 2. To eliminate the provisions which enabled council members or staff to seek to remove political opponents from council for political reasons. These provisions were immediately abused and caused turmoil in the city for 2 to 3 years. And 3. To eliminate unnecessary and repetitive provisions in order to simplify and shorten the charter. There is no need to duplicate state law in the charter. She summarized, if the changes are approved by the council and voters, the earliest election is November 2022, Leon Valley will have a charter which broadly defines its council manager form of government, gives maximum home rule power to the council to pass any ordinances not prohibited by state law, and provides citizens with the important rights of initiative, referendum, recall, and charter amendment. That was very well said. Who could possibly disagree with that? Gilbert Perales! That's who! He's such a dictator that he will quit before allowing the people to have control over their government. He's not going to allow the council to question his authority. Does he think city government should be funded by the people for the city manager? He said in his resignation letter, the final indicator that the leadership on council is not as committed to professional leadership came with the submittal of a summary of proposed changes to Leon Valley City Charter document, and listed as the first priority to eliminate the provisions which transferred power from the mayor and city council to the city manager, an act that is certainly a right for council to pursue, but leaves little doubt that there is no reason for me to remain, especially when council continues to question the authority vested on the city manager by the city's charter. I'm not sure why he pretends that this is such a surprise. The council has remained solidly committed to reforming or even completely repealing the charter.
I supported the charter, but it became weaponized. It became a political tool for people that disagreed with me, and it was, two people voted. Stop and think about that. 2 people voted to have me removed from city council. This whole systemic attitude that the city has to change. A lot of the employees have this bad attitude, and hopefully Mr. Brummett can help remedy that and correct this negative, poor image that our city has.
Basically, I'll just read the title. It says, change from another municipal type to type A general law municipality, right? So changing from Home Rule Charter back to general law was the discussion and reading the law, and the reason for that is that's the desire of the majority of the citizens that I've spoken to. Majority of the citizens at the polls, and as I've been around, they believe that a lot of the chaos in our city that's happened over these last few years was due to the charter, and I should say the flawed charter that has all these unconstitutional things in it, included that you can't, if you're accused of something and you're found guilty, then there's no recourse, there's no repeal. You can't call witnesses, you can't cross-examine your accusers. There's so many flaws with the charter and 312 process. That's why citizens are adamantly against our charter in its current form. And so that's why I wanted to discuss this. And we have an opinion from our attorney. Right now our hands are kind of tied.
The central thing that I campaigned on is getting rid of the charter and returning to what Leon Valley used to be, a peaceful, serene place where people get along, where duly elected officials are not kicked out of office by their political opponents, a place where the city council makes decisions that are in the best interest of the community and those that elected them, and where decisions aren't made based off of a city manager's agenda or her personal feelings or beliefs. That being said, so of course this is very personal for me, and I echo the sentiments of Councilor Bradshaw. I mean, literally 100% of people that I know, that I spoke to, that voted for me, knew that my central issue was getting rid of the charter, and they voted me in office for that. But for the time being, our hands are kind of tied, and so I'm going to motion, and this is because I believe that it's important to be transparent with our community, especially those that elected me, because I really would do anything I could possibly do within the context of the law to get rid of the Home Rule Charter if I had that ability. But right now, I don't.
But this is what's great about our country, is that we can have this debate. You go to many other countries in the world, you get shot for having this debate, right? So the fact that we can have conversations about how we desire to be governed is why we're here, because we all care about it. Bring any issue to the table that you want. Let's discuss the issue, and let's leave attacks on individuals about even raising a question. Let's leave those outside. Because raising the question is our duly elected responsibility.
Perales has mostly refused dialogue with councilors and residents unless they are openly favorable of him. It's impossible to find compromise if the city manager is not willing to talk.
Then we move then to Mr. Perales. Mr. Perales, you're next. City
Real
Manager's
quick, Mayor,
report.
the city manager's report is listed on the agenda and also
Okay.
on the city's website. So
Okay, very
that's
good.
really all I have.
All right, and
Perales has mostly remained silent, concealing his true opinions and intentions until now. He has finally expressed himself, and his letter confirms what many were thinking. Gilbert Perales is not the right city manager for Leon Valley. The establishment group of so-called professional city managers usurp control of city governments to advance their political, personal, and financial agendas. Having a dictator city manager is business as usual in most cities. The councils rubber stamp staff initiatives and protect the staff from accountability. It's the tail wagging the dog. The city manager, rather than the council, creates policies which are adopted without scrutiny by the council. If the actions of the city administration are later criticized, the city manager will claim that he is merely following the law passed by council, even though the city manager is the one who pushed through the ordinance in the first place. The Leon Valley Council has advanced numerous proposals to move the city forward, and under interim city manager Crystal Caldera, a lot was accomplished, including firing out-of-control police chief Joe Savaggio and enabling the installation of fiber optic internet, which was previously shut down under Kelly's administration. Under city manager Perales, the staff has fought against every major initiative of the council. Red light cameras are now banned in Texas, but Kelly, without council authorization, signed a contract to ostensibly extend her red light camera program years into the future. Councilman Stevens told me that the city attorney blocked council from doing anything about red light cameras. He said, quote, "They blocked us from practically everything." When the councilors attempted to access traffic crash data, Perales shut them down during a city council meeting.
Can we get, to the whole council, and let's be completely honest, Will, though he sits over there quietly, he is like an Excel genius. And so Will can go through and like really compare. In TextDot, you can download the data sets, like huge files. But can we get all the Excel files, and then we can go through and sift and actually sort? Is that possible?
There's problems with that. The CJIS things that come into play.
The what thing?
Come to the play,
I'm sorry,
What is
did you
that?
say?
If you're not cleared by the Department of Justice, you can't access
Oh,
any files in the
okay.
police department, period.
All right.
I mean, there's no exception to that.
And
So
it's
that's a federal law.
All right,
So,
excuse
I mean,
me.
we don't, I can't go into his business, I can't go anywhere near a computer that's in the police department unless I'm CJIS certified, and that's everywhere. So I have to be CJIS certified, and that, these are federal rules,
Right.
not ours.
And it's a criminal violation, and we risk losing access to the entire CJIS system, which would render our police department inoperable.
Wait, okay, so check this out. We as a governing body, we have to make policy decisions on crashes that occur. The only data set that's available to us is TextDot today, and it's not reliable. And so we want the raw data because it's reliable, and we can go through and compare it on Excel. So we're expected to make policy decisions based on red light cameras, though we will never actually see the true data and do an actual data analysis. It doesn't make sense. For each of those crashes, each of those crashes that are represented, I can get like 120 pieces of information for that crash through TextDot, open source,
Yes.
no registration.
Yes,
But apparently I can't get that from my own police department.
unfortunately, no. I can't,
Because of this federal law.
because of CJIS.
Yeah.
For for crashes.
Okay, so we're trying to give direction here? This is part
No,
of
the goal was to get the raw data.
Well, I know.
That was the goal.
Well,
Mayor,
it says direction to substantiate red light camera statements. Okay, so you're saying you want the raw data to substantiate
Well, I think
I'm
it says
just going back
with
to the-
verifiable raw data for all
Okay.
traffic crashes.
That's here.
So we can have that?
No.
Well, that's-
Uh-oh.
So then how can we verify it if we can't see the data?
So, and I don't know if you're catching this, like, we don't trust y'all.
This tactic is called laying behind the log. Instead of writing an email or calling counselors in advance to share concerns about records access, they jump up and spring it upon you at a public meeting. Since the counselors had no notice, they could not verify the staff claims. Thus, they had to rely upon the incorrect statements of the city manager, the police chief, and the Rampage Law attorney chick. However, state law specifically permits access to crash data, which Stevens finally received, but only after confronting Perales about the law. Perales dictated Rampage Law attorneys to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on so-called legal briefs to counter virtually every move of the council. The self-described philosophy of Rampage Law is that they shake up the status quo and act boldly. To me, it looks more like political activism than legal advice. It should be no surprise that Rampage Law is trying to block the council at every turn. Partner attorney Charlie Zeck was one of the forces behind the new Home Rule City Charter. In a future video, I will show you just how much taxpayer money is blown on the staff's attacks on council. Unfortunately, Perales continued to lay behind the log and empower staff who continued to wage old wars started under Kelly's administration, such as the continued targeting of the San Antonio Aquarium. In October, the council held a meeting to resolve the years-long legal battle. During the meeting, the fire chief sprung a new claim that the aquarium parking lot slope was too steep for the snowflake firemen. Staff continued to fight the council at future meetings. Councilors Stevens and Orozco finally had enough. They motioned to issue the certificate of occupancy to the aquarium.
Okay, then we move to agenda item number 5, which is possible action on issues discussed in executive session if necessary. Yes, Mr. Stevens.
I'd like to make a motion that we issue the certificate of occupancy to the San Antonio Aquarium contingent upon the passing tests of the backflow prevention devices.
I second.
Okay. All right. We have a motion by Mr. Stevens and a second by Mr. Orozco to issue the certificate of occupancy to the aquarium as per the Rule 11 agreement. Any further discussion? All right. Ms. Pasale, let's take a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Martinez?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Aye.
Counselor Hefner, I'm sorry.
Aye.
And Counselor Orozco?
Aye.
And Counselor Bradshaw?
Aye.
Okay. Very good. The motion passes unanimously. All right.
The council unanimously approved the vote. The matter was finally laid to rest, or so the council thought. However, staff never issued a certificate of occupancy to the aquarium. Instead, Perales wasted more money on attorney chick legal opinions to undermine the city council. He refused to execute the duty required by the city council. Section 5.01c4 of the city charter states that the city manager shall see that all laws, provisions of this charter, and acts of the city council subject to enforcement by the city manager or by those subject to the city manager's direction supervision are faithfully executed. Section 5.01c8 continues, the city manager shall perform such duties as are specified in this charter or may be required by the city council. Is he a tyrant? The council unanimously voted against the wishes of the staff, but instead of getting in line, City Manager Perales is refusing to abide by the will of the people via the elected council members. The awesome city manager does whatever he wants and won't accept directives from anyone. It's crazy. This is not what American governance is supposed to be. Unfortunately, it's a common occurrence. Voters have allowed the government to be controlled by unelected technocrats who have little regard for the people. Let me say it again another way. For months, the staff screamed and kicked their feet in opposition to the council. But the council moved forward to a new era despite the staff being stuck in the turbulent past. Instead of staff putting their egos and differences aside, they have dug in their feet and refused to work together with council to make a real impact for the community. Over the past 2 months, it has become apparent to me that Perales thinks that men like me, Eric Mata, and Councilor Stevens are trash. He never demonstrated any respect to us. He blows off our correspondence by either ignoring it are providing low-effort, one-line replies. He disregards the law and refuses to provide public information. After all, he knows what is best for us.
Justin Pulliam, Fort McKinney. I had a question about the tax rate issue. I was wondering if there was, why is there no room in the maintenance and operations budget to find money there so the taxpayers, the citizens could have capital projects, how the reserves have been over the past few years, and how the overall M&O spending has been, and how does that compare to other cities nearby who do similar projects?
Thank you.
I know what 52 cents per month.
Typically, the way the property taxes are broken out to is into O&M, which is operation and maintenance, and that pays for all general fund, work, police, fire, parks, library, everybody is paid under the general fund. And there's a portion of that that goes to debt, and that debt is what pays for the bill for all the construction that we've done over the years. And I believe we have an outstanding $8 million debt issue. So we have to pay for that $8 million, and that's typically how you work the other property taxes divided. Now, the council always has the ability to cut back on O&M, but what that translates to is the willingness of the community to be able to agree to receive less services on the operation and maintenance side than you do right now. So for every penny that switches over from O&M to debt, then you would have to deduct $1 million plus from the O&M side. And that would certainly impact some of the services that we provide our community. I'm not sure how we compare with all the other cities, but I will tell you that every city is different because of the valuations that exist. So you can never compare yourself to the city of Bernie, to the city of Pelotes, to the city of Alamo Heights. You can't, because their development is totally different. Their valuations and value of their property is totally different. So you can't ever compare apples and apples with anybody else. You can certainly look at the type of services that you provide your citizens, and you can compare that part. But as far as property taxes, it really is, everything is really different across the board.
His response was disappointing. He appeared unwilling to innovate creative ways to improve service to the public with efficient use of tax dollars. And he rejected accountability. Don't we dare compare his administration to other cities. Let's take a look at the opening of his resignation letter. After careful consideration and much soul-searching, it is quite evident that the verbal understanding we had reached during my interview and was the catalyst that helped with my decision to join this organization had failed to materialize and doesn't seem to have a chance at happening, at least not in my professional lifetime. At that time, council agreed to focus on the future and place the turbulent past in the rearview mirror. Unfortunately, at virtually every public setting, several elected officials, along with some citizens, continuously remind us of the faults of the previous administrations, and, worse, make statements dishonoring the reputations and integrity of current staff. Throughout the letter, Perales tried to claim the high ground by citing a purported verbal agreement that council later breached. But councils involved in the hiring process told me that there was no such agreement, and that if ignoring the problems of the past was a condition of his employment, they would not have hired him. Instead of moving forward with the much-needed reform of the obstructionist department heads, Perales has enabled them, reversing the progress that was made and returning to the culture of Kelly's administration. The resignation letter was very unprofessional. It's an obvious political weapon to attack the council and mayor. As soon as I finished reading the first paragraph last week, I knew what the letter would be used for. I delayed publishing it to let the anti-citizen establishment play their political games. I thought it would be more important to show you their games than to publish the letter before the ink had dried. City Manager Perales and the City Secretary initially ignored my open records request for the letter. Then on Sunday afternoon I received a copy, likely because they wanted to send it to their friends in the establishment media. A few hours later, KSAT 12's Patty Santos published the letter, slamming the current city council. As you might recall, Santos frequently published Joe and Kelly's talking points in opposition to the Change Leon Valley project. Her breaking news report said, in the letter pinned to Leon Valley Mayor Chris Riley on November 9th, Perales said his resignation was due to some elected officials and citizens' inability to move on from the past administration's faults. Perales said he had come into the position hoping to put more focus on the future and make an impact on the community. However, not everyone was committed to his vision, he said. The continuous barrage of disrespectful public comments towards staff and the constant cyberbullying is borderline harassment and is something I am not willing to spend the rest of my tenure defending or debating, Perales said in the letter. Perales said the final straw was when he realized that some leaders on the council were not committed to professional leadership. I'll stop at that line. It's an excellent example of media bias. The chip on her shoulder is ridiculous. It fits her narrative against those who ousted her pals. This is what his letter actually said. The final indicator that the leadership on council is not as committed to professional leadership came with the submittal of a summary of proposed changes to the Leon Valley City Charter. KSAT buried the lead that the resignation was about proposed charter amendments, instead modifying and reordering his statements to imply that the councilors were not professional leaders because of disrespectful public comments. Fox 29 also promoted the sensational line about cyberbullying, but unlike KSAT, were accurate regarding the charter proposal. They said, Perales also added, the final indicator that council leadership is not as committed to professional leadership was when they submitted a summary of proposed changes to Leon Valley City Charter. It's one thing to provide commentary, but another to twist information and present it as fact. That's why I present full documents on this channel when possible. I want you to have as much information as available, and I won't shorten a show at the expense of a comprehensive report. I don't have to rush the press with fake facts. I know that truth will prevail in the long run. Plus, Corruption Report was the first to report the resignation, and that was last week, when it actually was breaking news. Here's the rest of his letter. Mayor, I spent my entire career building teams of committed public servants willing to give their all, putting their differences and egos aside to make a difference in the lives of others. With that in mind, I agreed to join this team with Council's assurance that all the issues the city has experienced with past administrations would be put aside and we would work together and concentrate on making a real impact to our community. Sadly, while our employees saw the value and believed, as I did, that a new era was upon us, the truth is that not everyone is committed to that same vision. I cannot and will not continue to spend my days defending the present and paying for the sins of the past. The continuous barrage of disrespectful public comments towards staff and the constant cyberbullying is borderline harassment and is something I am not willing to spend the rest of my tenure defending or debating. As I mentioned in my interview, I wanted to be here to make a difference. Somewhere along that journey, I lost your support and commitment to that vision. Life, especially my professional life, is too short, and while my heart is heavy with the thought that I am abandoning a great dedicated staff, I see no light at the end of this tunnel and am therefore submitting my resignation effective January 15th, 2022. And with that rant, he revealed another concerning similarity to Kelly's administration: intolerance of criticism. These city managers demonstrate extreme contempt for the tax-paying public. He alleges people have possibly committed a criminal offense against him by asking questions and protesting his official acts. It's the same chilling tactic we saw from Joe and Kelly. There was no constant cyberbullying, unless that's the new terminology for an open records request. The city managers act like no one is allowed to challenge them. If Perales is so right, I think it would be easy for him to defeat the naysayers. But he said he is not willing to defend or debate the constitutionally protected free speech. I'm still trying to determine what professional leadership means to Perales. But one thing I do know is that he served with Kelly for years on the Texas City Manager Association Professional Development Committee. Did the two communicate during the city manager recruitment process? Perales rose to the top during the interviews. Bradshaw was the only skeptic. The council hired a city manager cut from the same cloth as the dysfunctional Kelly administration, yet expected a better result. The taxpayers paid for Perales and the council to attend the Texas Municipal League conference this summer. Instead of getting to know the councilors and using the opportunity to create a vision for the future, Perales avoided them for most of the conference. 2 weeks ago, he was in Charleston, South Carolina at an International City Managers Association meeting. It's possible the 3.5 square miles of Leon Valley are not large enough for Gilbert's ego. He complains about disrespectful comments to staff, yet he hasn't held back his disdain for a city administrator who has faithfully served a small town without adopting the International City Managers Club mentality. Not everyone can be as awesome as the government workers from the city of Arlington, where Perales worked as an assistant city manager earlier this year. Perales disrespected council members multiple times during public meetings. Early on in his tenure, he tried to shut Bradshaw and Stevens down for grandstanding. And last month, he claimed Stevens was breaking the law.
So those are the legal issues that we have to look at and make sure that we don't violate the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Mayor.
Mr. Bull wanted to say something. And Mr. Power?
I just wanted to clarify one thing, is that to Mr. Stevens' point, you can discuss, but you certainly can't tell them how you're going to vote. That's the issue in question.
Wait, so what law is that, Mr. Perales? No, seriously, because I disagree. I mean, I don't think that's a law. I think that's the common misunderstanding, which I just don't think that's the law. So we can't tell somebody how we're going to vote before we come in?
No, because you might change your mind and then they'll do it.
I mean, we have to. I mean,
I think the issue was, and it's the Open Meetings Act. I think the issue is when you're talking to an intermediary and having them go to all the council members and they're figuring out how to vote, and it kind of ties that series, and that's where the walking quorum issue possibly comes in. It's all fact-based, of course, and we're just theoretically talking about this, but that's a pitfall that we need to avoid and be careful with.
the walking quorum laws was ruled unconstitutional.
It falls under lobbyism, bribery, and corruption, is what that could quickly fall into.
Councilman Stevens held the city manager to account, especially after the city staff failed to make progress on the important community issue of stray animals.
Could we get a public summary of what's going on with the police chief or not?
Feel free to call me.
There's not really anything. I was talking to him basically about the animal control issue.
Oh, okay, about what you're writing about?
Yeah, the private meeting that we had where absolutely...
You and him had a private meeting?
We had a Zoom and in-person meeting. I was on Zoom. Ms. Natalie Flores was on Zoom. In presence was the mayor, the new city manager, Crystal Caldera, David Gonzalez, Lynn Joseph, and Josh Stevens, Councilor Stevens. And we had a meeting concerning the interpretation, as Leon Valley Police Code Enforcement does, on that if you save a dog off the street like my neighbor does,
then it's yours?
It's yours.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it is horrible. And we left that meeting with Chief Gonzalez going back saying that he would get a meeting and inform his staff of the new procedures, that you don't say that to the citizens because that makes for a less, nice communal feeling.
Nothing's being given out to citizens, and we were promised during that meeting that these things would be delivered, and they haven't. So that's one thing that could help citizens right now.
So the staff and the council is not on the same page, and so this is, because they don't want to do this. There's excuses and stuff, and some of them are legitimate, but that's the problem. So I really did think the problem was resolved, but this is us trying to get on the same page with them through the, the powers that the voters have, given us by electing us. So we're forcing this, and I think we have to wait until the process is done for it to actually become effective.
Stevens had this to say about the meeting with Perales. At the end of the meeting, I looked at Mr. Perales in the eye and stated, "Do you need me to take this ordinance and make some changes so it is crystal clear?" He stared me back in the eye and sarcastically said, "Oh, we can write ordinances better than you," and then stated, "Nah, I got it." When Perales refused to follow the public information laws, Councilman Stevens released Kelly's EEOC complaint, narrowly avoiding a costly lawsuit for the city. Stevens quickly and effectively dealt with the obstructionist city manager before things got worse. Perales said he would not go into executive session about his employment, and he claimed councilors can't communicate together outside of meetings. Stevens was left with no other option than to handle the situation himself. I think he should be praised for saving the city money and time. I've included the emails for the councilors in the video description below. The resignation letter confirms what some of us already speculated. Perales had no intention of working along with the council. He was unwilling to be held accountable. For weeks now, the signs were obvious to me that he was on his way out. And I think it's for the best that the conflict was confronted early on. 2 weeks ago, I contacted Assistant City Manager Caldera to determine her willingness to stay in Leon Valley through the turmoil. Fortunately, she remains committed to the community. The city charter can be amended or repealed next November. Things have improved substantially this year. There is more work to be done, but there is no reason to get too excited. The Leon Valley story will continue. Thank you for watching.